Hello everyone, it's November 11th, 2014. It's Remembrance Day. It's also Tuesday. In fact, it's Harp Tuesday. And in this episode of Harp Tuesday, what I thought I would do is take a look at the Handel Concerto for Harp. I recently uploaded a video from a performance, and somebody suggested that this would be a good piece to talk about on Harp Tuesday, and I thought that was a great idea. So I'll probably do several episodes working through this, and it's a great piece of music. Of course, Handel would have originally written it for the Welsh triple harp, which is crazy harp, right, where you have two sets of outside strings running in parallel to each other that are the white keys. You know, both hands have access to either. Both hands have access then to the white keys, right? And in between this third set of strings, the triple harp, that in order to access, either hand would have to reach through the white keys, the outside set of strings, and grab this inside set of strings. So quite a different technique, of course. You certainly couldn't get the same amount of volume, right? Because you can't do a nice big close when you're in there already got, reaching through these strings. And so various people have then taken that original and done their own edition of it, perhaps taking advantage of the pedal harp and filling it out a little bit. So the version that I learned many, many years ago is the Grandgeny edition. That's the one I'm going to be talking about. Certainly not the most historically accurate, but a very nice arrangement nonetheless. And I make a few changes, which I will talk about, but on the whole, it's a very nice arrangement. I love the cadenza. Again, not historically accurate. It's much too long, but it's just a great cadenza. So much fun to play. And it works very nicely as a solo piece. In other words, you can play it with orchestra, but the orchestra part is filled in like we're playing all the time. So, and for example, in that video, I'm playing just solo harp, no orchestra. So yeah, this is the version I know. That's the one I'll be talking about. And I'm going to start by looking at the first movement. The first movement, of course, starts with this glorious just a couple things to talk about there. One is these repeated chords, right? Where we're in the right hand, we're going. It's always good to think about when we repeat a note that just like when we have here, it's kind of clear we're going somewhere. In this case, we're kind of building up. When we have the same note, it doesn't mean that it has to be boring, right? It's not like, oh, I just heard that before. We can do something to keep the interest there and have a sense of the music going somewhere. And speaking of music, hopefully I've left enough space here so that you can see the sheet music and follow along. So, just being aware of that, right? Maybe we have a little sense of building. Maybe not, but playing around with trying to make those repeated notes interesting. And of course, in this case, maybe we're making sure to bring out that left hand. One other thing to be aware of with repeated notes or chords is that there's naturally a tendency to have them be a little bit staccato because, of course, we are going to have to muffle them when we replace. We have to replace because we're playing the same chord again. So being aware of that natural tendency and trying to figure out, do you want them to be, say, staccato, or maybe we're thinking about trying to replace at the very last minute. In this case, certainly Grandgeny has dots on them. He wants them a little bit shorter, I think. And I like that idea. I think that sounds nice to have them be a little bit shorter. Basically, not much, but just kind of that natural muffle staccato effect that we have because they're repeated. So we're not trying to necessarily delay until the very last minute and have them ring as long as they can. But just some things to be aware of on something as simple as a repeated chord or note. When we get this, this little thing happens twice. Now, Grangenie's got this and then, but it's the same thing. And it's a spot where it certainly might be reasonable to do a little bit of an echo effect. And I think I've talked about this many times before, that I'm not a fan of a huge echo effect. Like, I don't like really loud, really soft, really loud, really soft is like maybe just a little bit too obvious, right? Not subtle enough. But I think here it's nice to kind of have a little graduation, right? We're kind of at this level, and then we're maybe at this level, and then back at this level. So this sense of... Anyway, just to, again, keep our interest throughout this, even though we're hearing the same thing. And finally, these grace notes, and I'm playing them on the beat. In other words, this starts on the beat. Rather than before the beat. Playing them on the beat is certainly what would have been done in Handel's time. The ornaments, you think of all the Bach ornaments, right? They're on the beat. And it actually makes it a little bit easier for us because we don't have to try to get them to happen before the beat. We get to have instead of having to go, having all four of those notes happen in that span of 1/8 note, we get, and now this just has to happen fairly quickly, a little bit faster than 30-second notes, but we get a little bit extra time. And of course, this section, for example, and a lot of this are great chances to practice your open octaves, right? The muffling, so that making sure that you're getting rid of whatever extra sound you can each time you go to place the next octave. And here's a link to the episode that I did on open octaves and muffling. Then we go on. You'll see here that Grangeny has suggested close to the soundboard, I think that's not the super close, but it's the, or actually maybe that one is this. Yeah, that one's the very close to the soundboard, I believe. I've never been a huge fan of the effect of close to the soundboard, and it certainly provides a different timbre and different quality of sound, but it's never hit my ear and been something that I really like. It's also kind of annoying, right? Just that playing, and I think maybe I've mentioned this before. It's a little hard. It definitely makes it harder to close the fingers. In a case like this, it's good to remember that, again, this is Grangeny's edition, his arrangement in a way, and that Handel certainly wouldn't have put that in there. So I think one should feel freer to leave that out if you feel so inclined. And so for me, I don't really go any closer to the soundboard there. Then we get this little thing. And again, I don't move the right hand down there, but try it, see what you think. You might like it. It definitely, a little different sound. It's kind of cool that way. But what I want to talk about here is this left hand pattern. Because that's actually really hard to do without buzzing. We're dealing with these much bigger strings than the right hand normally has to worry about, that vibrate more violently and make it harder to sneak in and avoid buzzing. A little bit of that we can get away with a little bit just because we have the right hand going as well. So a little bit of surface noise maybe is covered up by the right hand. But what I end up doing here is probably muffling, when I'm going in to try to get that B after having played the A, and I don't know how well you can see this, but hopefully at least a little bit, and hopefully it's showing up also on the sheet music. In order to sneak in, I would have to be, if I could come from above and a little bit on this side of the string, no problem. but I'm anchored by my third finger. So to try to sneak in there without touching that A is actually really, really hard. So I probably automatically, like I'm not aware of doing this, but I believe I automatically actually use the back of my knuckle to muffle that A. So I deliberately touch it, but quickly and firmly, so that that stopped sound is very brief and kind of masked by all the rest of the sound that's happening, rather than having an inadvertent nick. So you can see by the time I've finished playing that F, you can see that A is no longer ringing. So those are the little things that sometimes you have to do, just whatever you can to avoid buzzing. So taking something like this down slowly, seeing how are you going to have to contort your hand. Are you going to have to muffle some notes as you're placing? Is part of the act of placing in order to make that as clean as possible. So that's actually a deceptively hard little spot. We go on again. I don't really go closer. This is I believe the just slightly closer to the soundboard mark, but I don't do that as well. Here, this little thing, I believe in the original it's all here. I can't remember, it's been a while since I looked, but anyway, I do like the... And I play 4-3-2 just because, again, that idea that maybe the thumb sounds a little bit different than the fingers, right? So, and it sets us up then when we do the last one with that little same fingering at the beginning with a 4, 3, 2, 3, 1. I learned it with the harmonics, but I don't actually play with them anymore. It's hard, right? They just don't have that same flowing quality that we can get when we're fingering them. And to me, again, I just wasn't ever happy with how that sounded with harmonics. So again, this is another example of, this is Grandjean's arrangement. It's not in the original. If you like it, great. If you don't, it's probably okay to leave it out. So I just and this is a great exercise for the right hand, where we continue. We just continue going along, and we come off here, and then everything's connected. I do that grace note, or the little ornament. You don't have to. Again, I believe it's something that Grandjean put in there. I do leave out this bottom G on the octave, because otherwise, we're coming down. It just makes it a little bit easier. Again, these things, trying to find that balance of making it easier for yourself and also the challenge. Like, I enjoy the challenge. I'll talk about a spot in a moment here where I keep something in that's definitely challenging and it could be taken out. Then we go on, again, thinking about these grace notes on the beat. And here, on this 2D section, it's not actually marked in the edition I have, at least, but I had to write it in. Just the sections where the orchestra does come back in. It's good to just be aware of that even when you're playing it as a solo piece, just to try to maybe change what you're doing a little bit, try to give difference in sound of, oh, here, now the orchestra's playing. And so here, this is the tune. When we hear that coming up. And I do like the idea of playing this not super close to the board, but which you can't see anyway, but playing it a little bit near the board just to give us a slightly different, help bring that out, right? It's just, again, remember, anytime if you're playing something with the left hand and you want to make it a little bit crisper, a little bit cleaner, you can just come down the strings a little bit. So this. And trying to back off on the right hand a little bit on the start of that so that we hear the left hand. As we start the third page, we have these little trills. I actually, so as marked here, you could certainly take the second set of notes in the left hand. So and that's the way I learned it, I think. But I've ended up just leaving out one of those so that we just imagine you took out in the little above the trill, right, where he's written out the notes. If you left out the grace notes and just had, you just do 2, 1, 2, 3, 1. I like that. It's really crisp. It's easy to do consistently, and so to me, I just like it. Sounds good. The change that I like. I don't slide here. I do connect on the bottom. I just do 1, 3, 1, 4. Come off. And again on the beat. I don't think I switched to 3 there. I think it's just 2, 1, 2. Yeah. But here I do connect to 3. And then here's this little spot, which again is totally something that Granjani put in there. I play it because I like the challenge. It's actually really hard to suddenly, boom, be hit with this scale and to make that sound really even. And I you know, kind of that idea, well, if somebody could do it, I'm going to do it, right? You know, it's a challenge, which I enjoy. Like, I like that little adrenaline rush. But again, that's something that could easily be left out. And probably not that historically accurate. This is a really neat little section. A lot of fun to play, and again, there's those muffles I really like. I think those muffles are effective. You're just kind of muffling the low note that you just played, and it shouldn't be like a boom, bang muffle or anything like that. It's just so that they become true eighth notes, right? That we are actually stopping those notes, not letting them ring. Then in this next line, just be aware of the voicing, right? That we have these two separate voicings going on, so that in this note, these are different voicing, lower voicing, so that we kind of try to make a graduation or just some, being aware of it as the first step, and then trying to make it clear then to the ear that there are these two voices going on. And the way, that way it's actually written, the fact that there's a bit of a difference in where they are on the, they're fairly far apart from each other, that helps, but just trying to be aware of that. This little tootie, I think I like the little writ there at the end. Not a lot, right? But just a little bit of enjoying this little cadence here. And then, and again, that's the end of it. That's a short little 2D section, right? And then we get the solo with the harmonics. Whatever it is. I remember this section being a little bit interesting to learn because it felt like the pattern was going along and then suddenly it changed. And that's always, just good to be aware of patterns and when they change and how they work. When we get this, that's later on, I guess. So anyway, to me, that was always just a spot which, when I learned it, needed some extra work. Let's talk about this second to last line then on this page, where we're going. So of course, here's this little Alberti bass pattern walking up, and in the left hand, and in the right hand, just being aware of what you need to do to play that as cleanly as possible, so that we may actually end up delaying some of these later placings. Normally, right, we want to have this idea that when we place 3, we're going to place 2 and 1, right? But here, if we need to, we can maybe delay the placings a little bit just to make sure things are ringing for as long as possible. And for me, once I kind of learn that section, I'm paying attention to the left hand here. Remember, the left hand's just going up one string at a time. And here, again, I may be muffling this low note with my third finger, with the back of my third finger, as I go to place the note above it, rather than trying to sneak in completely. I'm stopping it. And I'm paying attention to my left hand and using that as a cue as when to stop, right? When we get to that E, it's going to be 2, and we're going to get out of it. Anyway, just an interesting thing to think about, where your eyes are looking in a section like that, which just keeps repeating until at some point it's no longer repeating. And then we got all this stuff, and again, this whole piece, the faster movements are all about playing evenly, loud and reasonably fast and even. One of the things to be aware of in terms of playing something evenly, like this section, is it can be really effective to put a little bit of extra emphasis on the off beats. So rather than, let's see, sorry. This is actually a bad spot because of the way it's written. It looks like the beat is on a different spot. Let's I guess this is as good a spot as any. So instead of doing it on the beat, as long as we're aware of where the beat is, and the left hand helps with that, we can also emphasize that second note and the fourth note. Yeah. And again, this is a really bad example, but it is a clean example. Like if we're doing this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Once that's established, right, where the beat is, we actually want to pay a little bit more attention to 2 and 4. Just because it helps us drive it on. Those are the notes that are often left a little bit disadvantaged. Or here's a great example. Be aware of that second one and this fourth one. just being aware of them anyway. Any sort of scale passage or anything like that, the notes in the weak position are always worth emphasizing. And of course, you can always try and practice anything like this that you want to try and get really, really even and loud and crisp with a dotted rhythm. You know, and the opposite. Always great ways to try to build evenness. And finally, right at the end, to me, one of the hardest spots in this movement is actually this little so I always have to practice that one a little bit more than the surrounding notes where we suddenly have the 16th thrown in there. This and it's getting down to this note, right? This is okay, no problem. But jumping all the way down here is a little bit harder. And finally, we have this great hand over hand chord. And you want to start it early, right? We're slowing down. We've gone. We slow down a little bit here, and then we pick up back to that same tempo. Slow down. But whatever speed this is, you know, if that's kind of where we want the beat to be, we want to try to start it early so that the beat ends up close to the top of the note. Anyway, just some things to think about on this first movement. So I think I've blurbled on for long enough. Hope this was useful, and I will see you soon with the rest of Handel's Concerto for Harp. Cheers.